Call the Board of Adjustments and Appeals meeting to order. Ms. Warwick, please take the roll.
Mr. Cole?
Present.
Ms. Oswald?
Present.
Mr. Friesen?
Present.
Mr. Koenig?
Present.
Mr. Collins?
Present.
Ms. Dickerson?
Present.
Chair Taylor?
Here. All right. I need a motion for approval of the minutes from May 14th, 2025.
I so move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Was anyone absent that needs to abstain? All right, Randy would need to abstain. So let's do a voice vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. We do not have any approval of findings of fact, so we can move to the public forum. This is an opportunity for the public to address the board regarding items not on the agenda tonight. We'll have a separate opportunity for that. Commissioners and staff will not engage in a dialogue or answer questions during this time, but speakers may be directed to staff or other sources for responses at a later date to questions raised during this public forum. Presentations are limited to 3 minutes. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak at this public forum? All right, seeing no one, we can move on to the public hearing. There are 7 members present. Therefore, 5 affirmative votes are required to grant a variance or appeal. This is the public hearing for case VAR2025-001. The board is authorized to grant or deny a variance by Part 3, Section 60 of the Inglewood City Charter. Anyone aggrieved by a decision rendered by this board may appeal that decision to a court of record. However, such an appeal must be made within 30 days of the board's decision. Any approved variance is effective at the end of the appeal period. Building permits for construction associated with an approved variance will not be issued until the appeal period is ended. Building permits must be obtained and construction begun within 180 days of the variance's effective date. The procedure for this meeting is that the case will be introduced and an overview be given by staff. The applicant will then have a chance to present their request and reasons that the variance should be granted. Proponents will be given an opportunity to speak. Opponents will also be given an opportunity to speak and address the board. And then if needed, staff will have the opportunity to address the board again. The public hearing for case VAR 2025-001 is now open. This is with Mr. Rodriquez at 4710 South Sherman Street.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I do.
Please state your name.
Eric Sampson, Planner 2 with Community Development. Good evening. So the variance tonight is for a project at 4710 South Sherman Street. In October of 2024, the building division issued a stop work order for a residential addition being constructed without permits at this address. When the property owner subsequently applied for the required permits, it was discovered that the addition that he had constructed was within the 5-foot setback that is required in the R1C zone district. So you see up here, there is a illustration of the addition that was constructed without permits. So the addition was constructed to keep the new wall flush with the existing, which was constructed in 1927 prior to current zoning regulations. The current residence also encroaches into that 5-foot setback. Here are some photographs taken from staff. This is the picture of the addition from the backyard next to the garage. And then the picture on the right is you can kind of see the back of the addition in relation to the neighboring property to the north. So in Table 5.2 of the Residential Building Code, R1C district does state the 5-foot side setback for any residential structures. And then staff did route the variance application request to the building division. And the building division currently, at the time of this meeting, cannot approve the project as is at this time. There are still some criteria that needs to be met. And we do have a representative from the building division here if you do have any questions about that. For the analysis of the variance request, staff looks at 5 criteria. The first is that a unique situation exists, a unique physical situation exists on the property, such as size, shape, location, slope of the lot. And this subject property is a pretty standard Englewood lot, and there's really no topographical significance on the lot. It's pretty flat. The second criteria is that these physical conditions deprive the applicant of being able to do something that is allowed by the property owners in R1C zone districts. And again, this kind of goes back to the first criteria. This is a really standard lot, and there's no physical characteristics existing that would prevent him from constructing an addition in a way that would meet current zoning regulations. The third is that the variance is consistent with the intent of the zone district regulations. And so we felt that this was not consistent with the intent of the zoning regulations, basically because we have a section of the Englewood Code that does allow for kind of administrative adjustments for situations such as these. But those adjustments for setbacks are limited to 50%. So 50% expansion, which could be done administratively. Since this structure is over that 50%, which would be 17 feet, it's actually 28.8 feet. It exceeds that administrative criteria, which kicks it up to a higher level of Board of Adjustment. Fourth criteria is that will not permanently impair the use or development of adjacent conforming properties. There were some items that were needed to be addressed in the building permit that could potentially impact the neighbor to the north. I had a building discuss more of that with you. But basically, community development could not determine sufficiently whether this would not have an adverse impact on the neighbor to the north. And then finally, the fifth criteria is that the variance is not a self-imposed hardship or difficulty. So since it was constructed without permits, this was a self-imposed hardship, so community development staff does recommend denial of this variance.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions for staff at this time? Mr. Collins?
Yeah, I have a question for staff. Say that the addition hadn't already been completed, what would your recommendation be if they came to you with the same proposal without the structure there?
So in similar situations in the past, when people have applied for permits, they have had requested an encroachment into the side setback from the Board of Adjustment due to the existing residential property being constructed pre-zoning regulations. You know, we saw a lot of them were like 3 feet from the property line. And so those who have come forward, at least in my time with the city, there have been a few approved by the Board of Adjustment when the request has been made prior to pulling building permits.
I have a question also. How many do you remember having approved to make it flush on that narrow part? Because I've seen an awful lot of these houses where there was a 3-foot setback only because of a concrete block garage. But when they wanted to add on to the back of the house, they met the setbacks and offset it, and it's quite attractive that way. I don't see any reason why it has to be flush on that side when it's not flush on the side where the setback isn't necessary. So how many have you approved at a 3-foot without any firewall or anything?
So let's see, I'm familiar with one, and that was approved again, prior to building permits, and it was for the applicant wanted to keep the existing wall flush with the addition, because I do believe that cuts down on construction costs and potential building code requirements.
Yeah, I believe we approved one like that several years ago here.
That's what I'm thinking of.
I have a different question for you. It appears that the garage is only about 3 feet from this building. As I'm reading table 5.3, looks to me like there's supposed to be a 10-foot separation between primary structure and garage. Did you guys consider that at all? Seems like an added difficulty here.
Yeah, we didn't think about it. Is that,
What was the question?
so there's supposed to be a 10-foot distance setback between
Yeah,
residential structure and garage? Okay.
Section 16, if I can read that, 16.5.3, accessory buildings B. If you go to the second page, which is page number 5.6, first item says accessory buildings shall be at least 10 feet from principal building.
Okay, yeah, so that we did not think about that when we were looking at this variance.
It looks like this went through the initial review and there's still 3 remaining items. Has there been additional clarity provided specific to potentially a drainage encumbrance on the neighbor to the north?
I will direct that to the building division.
Okay. And then would you also mind giving a little bit of clarity, on, you had described the potential administrative adjustment. I'm not quite sure I followed what would have been allowable at that point, would you?
Yeah, sure. So,
Do you want me to take this one?
you can, yeah. Sure.
So,
I'm sorry. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I do.
Please state your name.
My name is Brian Ice. I'm the planning manager. So the question of, I'll answer 2 questions. The first one that I want to answer is how many have we approved before? One, there's been a change to the code on this to try to prevent issues like this arising, and that was created with Code Next. It gave staff the administrative ability to approve a permit to extend that setback, but only up to 15% of what's already existing. So if you had a 10-foot wall that was already protruding into that setback by 2 inches a foot, they could extend it another 5 feet. But in cases where they're going past that, that's where we feel that this one is not something that we can support because we already had an alternative measure in place to allow for it. In other cases that I can recall in my 3 years here, where we've had setback encroachments, there's also been other issues like a slope. I know for one that was on a corner, they had some slope issues. I believe it was a corner, but they had some slope issues in the front of their house that really kind of forced that hand. This one doesn't have those. This is relatively flat. It's extremely similar to every single lot in that area that can meet setbacks. So it was really difficult for staff to try to support something like that. But did y'all understand what the administrative adjustment would allow?
Yes.
Yeah, good with that. So yeah, we tried to build in an allowance for us to do this, to allow, because Inglewood's a very unique community, and that we have homes, very, very old homes that predate even our zoning ordinances. So we don't want to make it difficult for them to renovate or to expand, but we want to let them expand within certain small framework, at least administrative.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Ms. Dickerson?
I was having trouble reading and seeing the little notations. So is the fence actually too far into the property, the adjacent property? Because it sounded like the fence was not on the property line, that it was.
We didn't have any comments regarding the fence. It was only the addition.
No, it was on the landscape plan. And I couldn't read it exactly, but it appeared that the fence was,
It's 0.3 feet is the way I'm reading it, which would be
4
about
inches
4
north of the
inches.
boundary line.
and it looks like the garage is way into the setback, way into it.
The garage was constructed pre-code. So we really wouldn't have a comment on that.
And garages are allowed to be 3 feet from the property line.
And they have a tighter setback as well with 3 feet.
But it isn't 3 feet.
But it's already existing.
It was existing prior to current zoning regulations.
But is the fence that 3 feet that you're saying that the addition is within the setback that's supposed to be 5 feet? Is the fence included in that 3 feet, or is it over the property line?
The fence can go right up to the property line.
Yeah,
As
but
for the exact location of the fence,
so is it at the property line now?
I believe so.
To clarify, the fence is not a part of the requested variance.
Correct.
Thank you.
And the dimensions shown here are to the property line, and then they note that the fence is 4 inches north of that.
Any additional questions from the board?
Do we still get to?
Yeah, I believe we can move on to the building official too.
Yeah.
Is that all right? Thank you.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I do.
Please state your name.
Carrie Babin, Assistant Building Official.
All right, thank you. I believe we had a question from Mr. Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Carrie. I believe we could just pick up right at the potential drainage encumbrance with the swale.
Yep. So as of Monday afternoon, Tuesday morning of this week, they did provide revisions that would get them where they need to be for the swale. So it could be approved.
Okay. And was there actually clarity on the fire rating for the materials that were going to be on that building as well?
Yep. So they did apply assembly details that would meet minimal code for the 1 hour fire rating from the addition portion only. So we don't retroactively enforce anything on the existing walls, but we do enforce fire ratings on anything new, especially those that are this close to the property line.
So it would seem that maybe the only other information that would prevent building department from approving this is the lack of clarity between plans. Point 1, I believe, sheets R1, R2, and A3.
So all that's been cleared up as well.
Okay.
The only thing that may prevent this is the fact that it is illegal construction without permits, and now here we are.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Do we have any other questions? All right, thank you.
Yep.
I neglected to pass around that we have verification and proof of posting. So I'll pass that around this time. All right, now it's time for the applicant. The applicant may come forward to testify in this case. Please state your name and address to the secretary who will administer the oath.
My name's Dustin. I'm representing Hever, Dustin Werbach. The address is 4710 South Sherman Street.
Can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I swear.
All right, so we have the materials that were included in the packet, but do you have anything additional to add to make the case tonight?
Yeah, can I pass these out to you guys? Just some
can we
small
do-
stuff.
Was this material that was in the packet, or is this?
It's in the packet.
No, the material he wants to.
I wasn't
hand
aware.
out.
I brought my own material.
Oh, do we need
Thank
to
you.
add
Does that need to be in the packet?
Are we able to provide them new material?
So it was not in the packet. Is that the situation? As long as it's being presented at this hearing, that would be okay. It would be best practice to make sure that the public had that information as well in the posted agenda, but that would be okay under these circumstances.
Sure. Thank you. Sure. Yeah. Was this? Okay. This may have been material from the packet tonight. Okay. think so. Okay, this is an addition. So
Yeah,
the-
it should just be 2 sheets.
the request, the first sheet that's just text was in our packet, but there's an additional piece that we'll make sure is part of the record.
It looks like just a locating map, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
Additional ones.
Okay. All right, please feel
Yeah.
free to go ahead.
First off, thanks for your time. Second, we understand this was built legally and the leniency that Inglewood has had on this project. I'm just going to jump right into the review criteria. For number 1, unique physical conditions. We believe it meets it because size, shape, and location. It makes a rearward addition the most logical and functional option. Extending directly back maintains the existing building profile. Basically, so it doesn't intrude on the southern portion of the lot. I think a lot of the lots that are already there kind of show this as well. For number 2, creates difficult or unnecessary hardship. As you can see on that one document I guys gave you, the diamond shows multiple houses that are also within the setback on the same face block and across the street. We think it preserves the architectural integrity of the home. Number 3 is consistent with regulations. We believe that going straight back actually keeps it in line with the property and keeps it in line with existing conditions, so it doesn't really change much, considering the existing was already built within the setback. Number 4, we don't believe that it will impair anybody else. It maintains consistent streetscape, so it doesn't really block anybody's view or anything. That's basically it. And yeah, we only had one more review comment on that, so we're very close. As far as the drainage goes, I believe that it's actually drains naturally to the alley and to the south lot. You can see on that corner right there that says 4 feet. And then below that, it says like 3.5, I think. So it actually drains naturally there. And then towards the alley, it actually shows like a 2-foot dip. I would recommend a swale as well, but otherwise I think it kind of meets the requirements. Beyond that, we are putting up a firewall, double sheetrock layer. I was not aware of the garage code. Wish I was previously. But that's basically it.
Okay. Does the board have any questions?
Were you the architect for the, sorry,
Yeah, go ahead.
were you the architect for the original plan?
Yes.
So it seems like drainage is already a moot point, but you're saying that you don't believe it would have encumbered to the north, but did you do any foundation work, adjust soils to have like proper drainage that if that footprint wasn't there before? I'm kind of skeptical of that point.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. But like I said, I think a swale was necessary. It is very close, so it's not like a bad thing if we end up doing it. But
Yeah, and I trust building departments already, if they believe it's
Yeah.
resolved, it is, but I'm just curious.
of course, a swale helps for sure.
And then second, on your exhibit, you provided diamonds for all residences that were within the 5-foot setback, but are any of those after code establishment, or any of them, recent?
I'm unaware.
Thank you.
I know you said in this case you're representing the homeowner. Did y'all do a survey of the neighbors to see and document that? I know there's a form that's usually used for that.
Do a survey for them?
Yep, usually that we've got a form that
Like a notification.
notification, and then it asks them do they have an issue with it or not effectively.
Oh, I had no idea.
Okay.
No.
Any additional questions from the board? Ms.
Yeah, I
Dickerson?
have one. There was a picture up there that said it showed the addition, and the addition, while it was flush on the north side, I think that was what the issue was, because
Yeah.
it was it wasn't flush on the south side. And I don't, if you had done it just exactly the opposite, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah, I agree.
Are you looking at the garage?
That's the garage.
Is there a question there?
Well, yeah, my question was, that picture seems to make it look like that they didn't make it flush on the south side.
So is the question, what's the yellow structure there?
I want to know
that's
what
the
the
garage.
addition is,
Okay,
because I
that's
can't
the
even
garage.
see the
That's not
addition.
that's not what the addition is from, sorry.
That's the addition? Well, where's the,
It's
on the others.
yeah, all right, that's just very
Do you
confusing
have a
to me.
question here? Because we can save this for discussion.
I do have an additional question. As the primary architect, had you been aware of the building codes at the time you architected this, would you have architected it differently so that it met code?
Yes, of course. I came into this a little late, so, working with what we have.
Do I see any more questions here from the board? Okay, thank you very much. Are there any persons present who wish to speak in favor of this request? I'm seeing no one. Are there any persons present who wish to speak in opposition of this request? All right, please come forward, and Ms. Work will let you take the oath. Please state your name and address.
Jan McCoy, cross streets are Sherman and Shenango.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
Yes, I do. I've missed some of this. Your voices are not quite strong enough in the mics, and that's really important. So I'll try to speak up, and if you have a question, please do so for me as well. I'm here to speak in opposition of this. I live in the neighborhood, so I walk it, I bike it, I drive it. I'm within 2 blocks. Kudos to Englewood and the building department, Eric, this is the 3rd work stop order I've seen posted within 2 blocks of my home since the beginning of 2025, if I'm counting correctly. And I wasn't expecting to have to be counting, so that's close. But I'm really glad to see that the city of Englewood is on top of this and paying attention. And I'm sure that's just from drive around as much as anything else when this kind of thing happens and people knowingly don't pull a permit. So the other one was on South Sherman, the same block, but halfway on the other side, on the west side of the street. And there was one in the 4800 block of South Lincoln. That one turned out wonderfully in the end from the exterior, again, compliments to however that worked out. The one that exists currently within the block of Sherman is a mess in front, and no wonder it's sitting. I would hate to see what the inside looks like if this is what the outside looks like presented to someone that's a purchaser. I did take the time to walk down and introduce myself to the neighbor that lives to the north. You never know what someone knows. He may know things I did not know. I didn't have the packet yet, and he had questions about setbacks. These aren't terminology that normal homeowners are familiar with, bulk planes, setbacks, etc. I worked with Historic Boulder and sat on the board for many years. To Ms. Dickerson's question, and one that's come up several times, if you do an addition on a historic structure, at least in Boulder, they want to know everything that changed along the history of the property. So a roof line would be lowered, the back of an addition would be in or out. They want to be able to trace the history of it. So there's certainly, that's not a stopgap to whether it's acceptable to the eye. The owner of the property to the north was concerned that this would get adversarial. He's hesitant. He feels like, these are my words from that conversation, overbearing and close. But he didn't know really what to do with it. And thanks to you, 7 people, that's what these boards are for. They're here to make those decisions and take the politics out of it and the emotion out of it for homeowners that need help. He wasn't sure what that would do, and I was there to encourage him to think in terms instead of what rights it would preserve for him and future homeowners. And by that, if I understand what went into code next, and there were so many pages to that last year, we're considering a 3-foot setback on this property according to the packet materials now. It was like 3'9", and I think the packet material said it's being considered a 3-foot setback. It's so close that it encroaches now. So if I interpret what happened in Code Next last year, that would mean, let's say the property to the north, this gentleman sold in 7 years. Now, there's no traceable objection on his property that would get caught in any kind of transfer of property. But if the new homeowner of that property to the north were to want to put an addition on the back of his house, if I understand Code Next now, you're going to force that new homeowner to make up the difference for the loss of the 5-foot setback. And that homeowner would lose the opportunity to use 2 feet of his property that he owns and pays taxes on to make up for the mistake that you might grant tonight if you grant this variance. Now, if I may understand that wrong, feel free to correct me if necessary. But I live on a property that's next to a grandfathered home. For 19 years, no one that owned my property pulled a survey. Fences particularly run into issues on this, and people start putting fences up where they think it is or where they want it to be, which is sort of what I feel like here, that this person did what they wanted to do, hopefully fast enough that it wouldn't get caught by the city of Englewood. I have an issue with that, and everyone in Englewood should have an issue with that. That's not the way the rules work. So the homeowner next to me put the fence up 14 inches onto my property. And for 19 years, because no one pulled a permit, I now face the possibility of adverse possession, which means that they get away with stealing my land. It's just that plain and simple. They put the fence far enough away if there was a fire on their property that someone could crawl out the window, where the true property line is like 12 inches from their window. And now I pay the consequences for that, possibly in the future. So please do not grant this variance based on the fact that it doesn't meet any of the 4, as Eric has already gone over. I believe there would be massive drainage issues. This property to the north is, maybe I'm eyeballing it, 8 to 9 inches below the grade of the home that's asking for the variance today. So those are my thoughts on this. I ask you to hold to the, as hard as that is, to hold to the letter of what the building code asks for. And there was no permit pulled on this, at which time much of this could have been negotiated and a whole different outcome could have happened.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. Are there any other persons who wish to speak in opposition of this request? Does staff have any additional comments, or does the board have any additional questions for staff after hearing?
Andy, can you hold for a moment? I think I got somebody online.
Oh, you do have someone online? Okay, thank you.
Ken, do you wish to speak? They're not unmuting.
Okay. Does staff have any additional comments at this time, or does the board have any additional questions for staff? Okay. You're still sworn in. Mr. Friesen?
I was curious about this lady's comments about what happens on the code next stuff. Is that actually part of the code, or was that just part of the discussions at that point?
I will defer to Brian on that one.
It's not part of the code. So if this building encroaches, the neighbor's setback would still be what it is. Each lot works independently. I don't know if building code would have any. Okay, he's saying no as well, if there would be any change to that, but no, that statement was not accurate.
Thank you.
On a standard permit for an addition, would there have been a site plan submittal phase required? So this would have been caught at that review, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Can we ask Dustin to speak again?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so I believe we have additional question.
So I'm curious, have you worked in this municipality prior? Have you had past experience doing additions for homeowners in this area?
Never in Inglewood before, almost every other building department though.
All right, so this is a new municipality for you.
Yeah.
Are you a licensed architect?
No.
Okay. Your office or company, does it employ a licensed architect to do this work?
No, but we sometimes hire them out to stamp plans and stuff like that. They'll review it for us. Yeah.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. The public hearing is now closed. We need a motion and a second so that we can begin discussion.
Motion to begin discussion?
Oh, we just need to actually do the, sorry, no, this is a good,
You're supposed to
Yeah,
say
it's,
it in a negative, positive or negative way. I never could get that.
As written.
Yeah, phrase it in the positive. That always makes it a little clearer.
I'd make
I'm
a
always going to
motion
fill a
that
silence.
case VAR 2025-001 at 4710 South Sherman Street be granted a variance to allow existing residential addition to encroach into the 5-foot setback in the R1C zone. This is a variance to section 1653, table 5.2 of the Inglewood Municipal Code.
Second.
all right, so now that there's a motion on the table, we can begin discussion. So we can talk about this relative to the 5 criteria that we have and what we've heard tonight. Anyone want to kick us off?
I can go first.
Yeah, Mr. Collins.
Based off the first criteria of the unique condition, while there is a unique condition of the structure itself being 1927, there is an administrative process to address that issue there. So I don't think that criteria has been met. As well, there's not anything unique about the property itself outside of the dating of that structure. On the second criterion, unnecessary hardship, I haven't yet to hear anything that sounds like an unnecessary hardship had this been gone through the normal process of a site plan being done and an architect following the code in their creation of that plan. On the third, consistent with the intent of the district, I would say that probably is not met for the same reason that there is a administrative process for properties specifically like this that kind of clarifies that intent there outside of something else. The fourth regarding impairing the use, that one I will say I haven't heard anything yet that sounds like use would be impaired outside of the resident that lives a little bit farther south but isn't in an adjacent property to give that clarity there. And on the final criteria of self-imposed hardship, I will say this one I think is a self-imposed hardship since this structure was created without following code, without following the building code process.
Yeah, Ms. Dickerson.
I guess from my viewpoint, there are several things that don't meet the zoning requirements, and it's just kind of cut and dried. It doesn't meet the zoning, and I can't, in my mind, approve that.
Sorry, Ms. Dickerson?
That's okay.
Yeah.
I agree with Mr. Collins. The only thing I would object to is the applicant's insistence that this preserve the architectural integrity. I don't see any architecture that has any integrity. And basically what they've done is make it look just like this big box. And there's nothing, that's not a justification, making it flush, I mean, they could have preserved the original thing and just offset, even made it an L shape, and it would have been a much easier process. But right now, it's really hard to see what's going on, and it just doesn't meet any of the criteria.
Yeah, Ms. Ozels.
I was just going to add that I don't necessarily have much to add on this because I agree with you. I think that this is fairly straightforward. There's not really much to discuss here, unfortunately, it's pretty cut and dry. So that's all I need to say.
Yeah, well, while I do appreciate that some steps have been taken with the building division to make sure that that third criterion about permanently impairing the use of adjacent conforming properties, I appreciate some of those steps. We do need all criteria to be met. So while I appreciate the work towards that, I am hearing a lot of these arguments as well.
I am curious, so we do need all 5 criteria to be met.
Yes, we would need all criteria to be met.
Does self-imposed limit itself to only the property owner or to the consultant involved? My concern here is that someone hired a different firm to do this work, and they may have been led to believe that they were in compliance with the process that they did not understand. So does that render it perhaps not self-imposed?
I would say if we had evidence that showed that, I would be willing to consider that, but I haven't seen evidence proposed here that states that that occurred.
It feels borderline negligent to me to not go after a permit at this point. I don't see how a contractor would just not do that due diligence.
And I don't disagree with you, but without that evidence being prevented, I don't know if I can consider that.
Understood.
Would that make a difference to you if you don't think any of the other ones are met, but that one might be? Does that somehow make a difference to the other 4 points?
I could see still merit for there being conversation around points 1 and 2. 3, I think that they're still making efforts to ensure that there's continued public health, safety, and welfare, which in my read is the underlying impetus for the point. 4 being there is no impairment to the north in terms of their ability to improve or change in the future, and 5th being the point of the discussion. So I could see it potentially, for me, being a point of sway for my own vote. But understand where you're coming from, that we don't necessarily have evidence of that action.
Yeah, I think to go back to your question about self-imposed difficulty or hardship, I think that's something that since I've been on the board, everyone's interpreted slightly differently, which is why we're a board of folks. That in my read has always been something that any property owner can hand down to the next one. I think some folks have said, well, it was the prior property owner that did this, that created it to be self-imposed, but I think that's up for interpretation to this board. Ms. Dickerson.
Yeah, just one other thing. Did I hear correctly from staff that now that they've worked this through, they could possibly approve it administratively?
So no, what I heard was that is something that I'm quite happy that Code Next has clarified, is that there is an administrative adjustment, but it is limited in the length of that building line that can be extended. So what I heard was that there would be a possibility for administrative adjustment, but not of this magnitude. But also what I think we heard from testimony tonight was related to the building permit itself, that there has been work towards the building permit side. We're just considering the zoning side tonight.
In other words, if we approved this, the building department could issue the permit based on our approval, if they meet all the other regulations required for the building department. And it sounds like they have at this point.
It also sounds like in the proposal, though, they did not ask for the variance to the 10-foot distance from the primary structure to the garage, which would mean even if we did approve this the structure would still be out of compliance until a variance was granted for that as well.
Can I clarify that?
Yes, please.
So the code says that an accessory building has to be 10 feet from the primary structure, unless we can look at fire rating. So if they fire rate things to get those buildings closer, we can reduce that distance. There is some flexibility in that, depending. Most of the time, when we apply that portion of the code, it's someone building an accessory structure, not always when they're adding on to a primary structure. Generally, people aren't building them that large to get closer to their garage in the back. So in those cases, they might have to say fire rate a garage to get it that close to that building. That's what that provision adds some flexibility in. So if they, and I'd have to talk to Carrie, if they fire rated or whatever to the back of the house, that building division would allow that structure to be that close to another structure, then the zoning would be okay with it too.
Okay, thank you.
No, I would beg to differ from personal experience. You enforced that on me.
Do you remember when that was?
About 5 years ago.
Remember, the code changed in 2023, and this is another provision that's kind of new.
Change though.
That provision is the same?
Yeah.
Oh.
So we've got the public hearing is closed, so we could reopen it if we want to hear additional testimony, but we need to stick to the discussion.
I'd like to have to follow up on my question that you answered. We still have the fact that it doesn't meet all of the criteria. And I would not be willing to grant a variance based upon those facts at this point.
Move to vote.
All right, so seeing that there's, I don't believe any further discussion, it sounds like folks are ready to vote.
I'd call the question.
Call the question. All right. All right, Ms. Warwick, could you please take a vote?
Mr. Collins,
I vote no, because based off the first criterion of unique physical conditions existing, while there is the uniqueness of the structure being predating code, there is an administrative process that would alleviate that, as well as there's not any additional unique characteristics that's been brought up about the lot itself. The second criterion I do not believe has been met based off there being no unnecessary hardship had the correct process been done as far as applying for building permits and getting a site plan approved. The third criterion, I believe, is met based off of the things they've done to get to the building code and to satisfy the building department. The fourth criterion, I believe, is met only because I haven't heard anything from an adjacent property owner stating that there would be any unnecessary hardship or impairing of use. The fifth criterion, I do not believe has been met based off of the structure being, the addition being built without the building process and not hearing any evidence to say that there was a self-imposed difficulty due to a third party.
I also vote no. Our job here isn't to say whether this be a good project for the resident and their family, or if we agree or not with the zoning code that they build on, but these 5 criteria, and do not think it meets all 5 criteria. So I vote no.
I also vote no for the reasons stated, but would still like to comment on the 5th criteria being very gray in this instance.
I also vote no. I concur with the comments about number 1 and number 2. I think on number 4, it is self-imposed, unfortunately, even though it might be self-imposed because of the designer. But they hired the designer, so I vote no.
For the reasons stated, I vote no.
I vote no as well. Unfortunately, while I do really echo Mr. Cole's take on I would not want to place a property owner, especially one who has placed such an investment in their property, into a difficult spot. Unfortunately, that is not the role, as Mr. Koenig mentioned, and unfortunately, this just does not meet the requirements. And so yes, I'll leave it at that.
I voted no. I agree with many of the reasons stated. While I do believe that the fourth criteria, efforts have been made to meet that, that may be the only one, but it definitely does not meet the other criteria for the reasons stated.
Motion fails 0-7.
Thank you. Back to the top of the agenda here. Next up, we have staff's choice. Is there anything on the agenda tonight related to staff's choice?
No, sir.
Attorney's choice. Do we have anything tonight?
No, not tonight. Thank you.
Board member's choice. Do we have anything?
The only thing I would say is that we have to verify the fact that we have to come back next week to do the findings of fact. I mean, next month to do the findings of fact.
Do we have to do findings of fact in the
Yes,
case that we,
within 30 days.
In a case that we did not approve the variance, do we need to be back?
Oh,
to
that's a
approve the
good
findings of fact?
question. Do we have to come back to do the findings of fact in 30 days?
I actually think we have a variance for next month anyway, so
No,
we have a
it's-
case that we'll be here for.
Brian, it got moved to August.
Oh, never mind, I take that back.
But for clarity from the city attorney, that would be fantastic to know.
Yes, I'm looking that up right now. Hold on a moment.
Thank you, sorry.
Thank you. That was a good question. Thank you.
I hope you're right. Since
I think it's still fine. Because they can appeal it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we may be back in July, but we're looking that up now. While that's happening, is there anything else, board members' choice with that? Maybe it sounds like there's some additional clarity around self-imposed hardship that people would like some training on, or city opinion on. Other than that, we're just patiently waiting.
So yes, because it is still a final decision, even though it's not granting it, it needs to be within 35 days.
Okay.
so we are coming back. Okay.
So yeah, we would be back to approve it, to review and approve the findings of fact. All right. Next up on the agenda is to adjourn. So we stand adjourned. Move to adjourn. Or move to adjourn. Yeah. Thank you.